being here. I'm just going to begin, inshallah. Okay, so Assalamu alaikum again. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm just going to be doing a quick piece on inspiration in the verses. So far we should be just between just 1 and just 8. Also, please let me know if I have too much background noise. I have the window open and stuff. So inshallah, just let me know. Okay, so the reason why I'm doing this whole series is a lot of the times, actually I can flip to the next slide. A lot of the times, I feel like my experience being a college student, being a Muslim American, being in a lot of these spaces, we have a cultural sense of the Quran, or we have the cultural sense of the Deen and Islam, but we don't necessarily have that tied in relationship with the Quran. And a lot of the times we pray, we do our fard. Some people kind of get lost in this dunya, in the sense that it can be overwhelming, especially I learned from, alhamdulillah, I'm from Maryland, so it's not as crazy as it is in New York City. But being a college student there, I definitely realized and got to witness a lot of the fast-paced environment, and how even in the little things, we can get lost in family, we can get lost in work. And so I think what gave me clarity and really allowed me to establish a strong relationship, or alhamdulillah, a strong relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was understanding his words. And so I just wanted to preface before I begin, I'm just going to be going in little snippets. I'm going to be, this is in the Quran, this should not be too long. I just wanted to kind of poke and prod and give that little inspiration in the verses, because as I was going through the Quran as a kid, or through my upbringing, I came across the traditional sense in that I learned the Quran through make sure you memorize, make sure you get this down, because you want to remain tied, but I wasn't able to really foster a love for it until my mother had started to see how everything was going on. And she was like, no, I want you to love your deen. I want you to love your Quran. I want you to love and understand the words behind it. And alhamdulillah, may Allah send blessings to her. She's the reason why I'm so connected to my Quran and to my deen. So what I just kind of wanted to highlight here again, before I get too lost in everything, is that this is just going to be snippets of ayahs and verses of inspiration, especially during the time of COVID-19. And I know we're probably all sick of hearing COVID-19, but it has impacted all of our lives. And I feel like no matter how negative it may seem, no matter how overwhelming or frustrating it may get at times, it's important for us to tie in with what we have, and knowing that the beauty and inspiration also lies in the Quran. As many times as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kind of shows to us or bestows upon us warnings and the threatenings of hellfire, there's also a lot of mercy in what he does. And I feel like a lot of the times, especially when going the Quran, there's always death mentioned before life. And so that gets to be very overwhelming. And so what I just kind of wanted to do was highlight the beauty within it, highlight that there's mercy within it, so that people can see that there's only goodness that we can gain from being tied to it, and how it gives us more structure and gives us more foundation and gives us more of a purpose in life. So inshallah, that's just what I'm going to talk about. Before I enter anything though, I want us to take a second, center yourself, focus on your breathing. I know that sounds kind of funny, but I promise you, you can only ingest and really love and take in what you want and take in the positivity of everything if you put yourself in that mindset. And inshallah, I'm going to get into that too. Again, I'm just a college student, and I just really came across building this love for the Quran, which helped me build a stronger love to my deen and to the people around me. So inshallah, I hope you guys can also take that away from this 3 or 4 part series, just calling it a recap. So I'm going to be doing some lessons, discussing the lessons, but what I want to do is kind of extrapolate the inspirational aspects. And again, there's a lot of content in a lot of these juzzes, so I won't be covering everything all the time, but I will be highlighting some things that resonated with me. And I encourage you all to go again and revisit these juzzes, revisit the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, just really take this time now with less distractions, if we do have it, and just focus in on what we can have, and focus in on the little things, and try to increase barakah, or get that ajr, or anything that we can during this time. Okay, so the Quran. Again, these are just some highlighted things that I feel like we really need to kind of focus in on when we're talking about the Quran before I even preface any of it. For those of us who know, again, it was divine revelation given to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah have peace and blessings upon him. It will be an intercessor for us on the Day of Judgment if we choose to read the Quran, if we choose to really embody its words. And I know that when I say this, it comes from also, as I guess, a state of privilege in that my mother was able to bless me with going to Quran school and also really try and learn. And even though Arabic is not like my first language, like we do have some similar traits or similar words in Somali. And so I do understand that I am privileged in that. But what I want people to understand too is that honestly, there's so much mercy and beauty in the recitation of the Quran in that if you recite it beautifully, there's a beautiful reward for you. And a lot there's intercession, you will get so much rewards, but it's even more so for those who struggle with it. And honestly, I sounded so choppy and so bad, but alhamdulillah, as the time went, I've been able to kind of hone in on my abilities to recite the Quran, alhamdulillah, and really just try and develop and understand and embody the qualities that reside within it. So what I wanted to say again is on the Day of Judgment, Yawm al-Qiyamah, if you all are aware of the Day of Judgment, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls all of us in front of him and he plays back the tapes and goes through all the receipts of everything that we've ever done, it's going to be intense. I'm not going to doubt that for you. It's going to be intense, but there's so much beauty in that day as well, which I unfortunately can't go too much into. But the Quran, if you choose to recite it, if you choose to step away from your life for a second in a moment, if you choose to, instead of watching something, if you choose to, instead of going to do this one thing, not to avoid your responsibilities, but make time for it in the 24 hours that exist within the day, the Quran will intercede for you on the Day of Judgment. It will speak for you and tell you and speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be like, pardon this individual. They took time to recite me. They took time to understand me. And they took time to really embody my qualities. And what I mean is, we can recite Quran. We can recite and just know Surah Al-Fatiha. We can recite, we can chant. But if we don't understand, if we don't take the time to look at the tafsir, if we don't take the time to really embody the Quran, then what are we doing? It's a very important part of our religion that I feel like many people tend to, oh yeah, I know Fatiha. Oh yeah, I know Juz Amma. And then everything else in between is for scholars and such. But again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did make everything so that we can recite it, made everything so that we can so it can be easier for us. Like even sort of Ikhlas is 1/3 the weight of the entire Quran. So there's a beautiful thing in that. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't go out and learn. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't go out and try and read it ourselves. Yes, alhamdulillah, we have scholars who will distill it for us. We have scholars who will interpret it for us. But at the end of the day, if you're not exposing yourself not just to the English translation or the translation within your own language, but to the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in its Arabic, in its form, in its form of perfection, then you're really losing something there. And I'm not the type to be emotional. I'm not the type to cry or I get too overwhelmed. A lot of the times I would be confused, how are people just crying at the sound of Fatiha, or how people just crying at the sound of recitation? But over time, it began to soften my heart. And I'm not even gonna it really began to become this beautiful thing to me that alhamdulillah only happened later on in my life, or now I'm 19, but alhamdulillah it came after some time. And honestly, that's the beauty of it all, because it can still come to you. And if you have it, alhamdulillah, and try and instill it in the people around you. So before I get too far off, yes, it will be an intercessor for you on the Day of Judgment. It can raise you in the ranks and elevate your status both in this dunya and the next. And the reward is 10 times the original during this month of Quran, this month of Ramadan and month of Quran. But inshallah, I really want you guys to just take a second and embody that and understand that this reward is not simply in the amount of words that you say, because it's by letter. So even a beautiful example is in the beginning of Baqarah, which we'll get to soon, where it goes Alif Lam Mim. You don't get a reward for Alif Lam Mim together. You get the reward for each individual letter that you decided to recite. SubhanAllah. And so I really want you guys to take this time to just understand that and take a second to just sit with it and understand that the Quran it should always be in your presence. It should always be on your mind. It should always be in your conduct. It should be something that you always refer to. It doesn't matter if it's matters of the dunya, if it's matters of anything at all within the heart, if it's the matters within your mind, your body, your sound. It's just something that I really feel like we tend to overlook, especially in like the society today and like the medicinal aspects of it all. We don't really hone in on or try to understand just the weight and the beauty behind it. I'm just saying, sort of Fatiha, sort of Duha has helped me like find things when they're lost, and just there's so much that we can do from the Quran. And so I really want everyone to really understand that, and that there's not much of a gap between us being able to learn. So with that, we hear like the beautiful stories that reside in the Quran. We know the beautiful ayat that exist there too. We know the perfect setup with the 114 surahs, 30 juz, and there's so many beautiful ways in which it is structured. It is linguistically so beautifully crafted. And so I just kind of wanted to highlight this ayah as well, and how, if I read this translation, and if whatever trees upon the earth were pens and the sea with ink, replenished thereafter by 7 more seas, the words of Allah would not be exhausted. Indeed, Allah is exalted in might and wise. So what I feel like we kind of get overwhelmed with the knowledge that exists within the Quran, and there's a lot of content there. But there's also an understanding that we need to have that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a specific knowledge. He gave us a specific moments from history. He gave us these specific elements and reduced it for us within these verses. And I know you guys are like, no, like there's like 600 verses. There's so many verses. But honestly, when it's broken down, when it's divided up, when it's read through like chapter by chapter, when it's looked through verse by verse, everything flows. Many of it is repeated as well. There are certain ayat, certain words, certain messages, as in like Surah Al-Rahman, أَفَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ? For what favors of your Lord will you deny? So it's like looking into those elements and understanding that there's a repetition and a beauty in it. And I don't know if you guys had the ability to listen to that surah, please do so. But it's the repetition and like the purpose and everything that's written in the Quran, subhanAllah. And that's just what Allah decided to give us. What He decided to give us in knowledge. What He decided to bestow upon us to not overwhelm us, but He knows that we can take and understand and take it as a mercy on us. Something that we can learn from. Something that even when everything goes wrong, we can always turn to for guidance. Something that when everything goes crazy and everything goes south, there's no book, there's no entity, there's nothing else that can save us but the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Him Himself. Like, subhanAllah, we don't live during the time of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We don't have that mercy upon us. So everything that we do, alhamdulillah, it was narrated that our good deeds will be even more heavier on the scales as a result of us not being able to witness the proof of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, especially during this time when everything is very ridiculed and religion is seen as primitive. So subhanAllah, just think about the weight of the reward, and then the reward being multiplied by 10 because of the month of Ramadan, and then even more so heavier in the scales because we're not in the presence of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I really want everyone to kind of put into perspective, no matter how many times we come across, beware of this, beware of that, beware of this, as we should. It's just we also have to understand that there's a beauty in it. When everything gets crazy, when everything gets stressful, there's a beauty in it. There's a purpose behind it. And I'm going to go into this later, inshallah, but when we face these trials, when we face things that tend to be overwhelming, when we face things that are too difficult for us to handle, imagine if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given us a heavier hardship. Imagine if He had given us something more so that we would not be able to even handle the burden of that. And that's more so than the one that we were given. No matter what hardships come our way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put a purpose and gave us the ability to handle it. We just have to turn to Him. And just imagine what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected you from had He not given you that hardship. He's protecting you from something by giving you this separate thing to focus on, the separate difficulty to focus on, because He's protecting you from something else. Or maybe this is the hardship that if you do have will get you into Jannah. Maybe this is the one where you calculate the enough rewards, or this is the one that just has one more enough to tip the scales in your favor. So subhanAllah, with everything going on right now, I really want everyone to kind of focus on the beauty that lies behind these times, the beauty that lies behind Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how it's not devoid from us just because we can't attend the masjid. It's not devoid from us, it's not detached from us, it's not far away from us. Rather, it's closer to us because we're devoid of other distractions and we can just focus in on it. SubhanAllah. So I'm gonna move on to the next, inshallah, and begin the juzzes. So this is going to be, again, a more comprehensive stance. I don't want to take too much time. It's already 1:20. But I do want to begin with, excuse me, Fatiha, going through Baqarah, ayahs, or to verse 141, and just kind of understanding the importance behind this. So these are just some of the lessons that come with Surah Fatiha and this section, or this juz. And again, I'm not a scholar, I'm not a imam, I'm not a sheikh or a sheikha, but alhamdulillah, I did come to compile some of these important notes when it comes to juz, the first juz. So inshallah, you guys can screenshot, you guys can let me know if you want me to send this out to you. But before we begin any of that, I do want to go to, quickly, I'm going to recite Surah Fatiha. So inshallah, you guys can, again, I really do preface and kind of put a lot of purpose to being in the presence of the Quran. So why would I begin without the recitation of it? And inshallah, we'll go verse by verse. I know many of you know Fatiha, but again, even if you don't, just pretend as if we don't for a second, and even if we do, take this as another opportunity to relearn what your understanding is. So inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Okay. So just to backtrack, that was Surah Fatiha. What I wanted to kind of get from this is going into the understanding that Surah Fatiha is the opening surah. It is there to expand us in, and encompasses the first, it's 7 verses that encompass the whole of the Quran. And I don't really, it serves as a healer at times, as we can tell during the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and even the Sahabas back then, how they use it as a form of healing. It encompasses the whole of the Quran. There's even a supplication that lies within it that shows just the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by giving it to us and bestowing it upon us. And so I just kind of wanted to begin with this because a lot of the times when we're learning Quran, we start with it. When we do, we're reciting our prayers, we're doing our daily prayers, it's a very big part of it. It's the first surah. It's the one that can complete the prayer. It is a surah that it is only compulsory for us to recite, whereas the other ones are considered sunnah. And again, I feel like a lot of the times the importance and the weight of this surah tends to go unnoticed. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. But even before that, we're invoked to say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, because it's so important to us that we remove ourselves from the shaitan. We ask Allah to seek refuge from the shaitan, because if we begin the Quran, or if we begin our Islamic studies, or if we begin any of our tasks without invoking protection from the shaitan, there is a possibility, more than likely enough, that also that the shaitan himself will corrupt what we learn. And so there's an importance here where we're asking from Allah, we're pleading from Allah to protect us from him. And alhamdulillah, during this month of Ramadan, he is locked away, but not the shaitan that lies within us, not the institutions that he's already set up to lay without us through the fabric of Ramadan. Yes, he's not there presently, but he could be there in what he'd already begun prior to leaving. So there's never an excuse not to seek refuge, to not seek refuge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So before you begin anything, if you ever get overwhelmed, if you ever get, sometimes the reciter is not for you, or this is not, you get to feel some type of way about the Quran or anything, ask from Allah to seek refuge from the shaitan. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Just to seek refuge from him so that you can begin your studies, you can begin so that the words don't become unclear to you, so that the words don't become contorted to you, so that you can really relate and feel something when you're reciting them, or when you're listening to them, or when you're getting discussions on them. So inshallah, that's always something very important to look into. And so as it continues on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, in the name of Allah, it begins, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful. And so there's many different definitions or translations and tafsirs that exist for this, but most of them put an emphasis on Allah being merciful. In the name of Allah, an invocation in his name. The most merciful, the especially merciful. So Ar-Rahman is a larger scope of his mercy, and Ar-Rahim is the especially merciful, and a special added emphasis to it. And then it continues, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So in this moment, we're asking, all Allah tells us, or it's written for us, decreed for us, all praise is due to Allah. All praise is due to him, and he is the Lord of the worlds. Because we're asking whether, okay, we said in the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful, and then we wonder, okay, who is this Allah? All praise is due to him, who is he? And he writes himself as the Lord of the worlds. Rabbil Alameen, the Lord of everything, the Lord of creation. But then again, that gets to be, so we start to think here. Let me know if I'm going too much into tangents, but we start to think here. Rabbil Alameen, right? We break it down here. We're thinking, well, okay, he created the worlds. So all that exists within the world is also a responsibility, or happens with him knowing, happens with him being aware of it. All the bad, all the good, everything comes from him, as he knows what is seen and unseen. And at this point, it gets to be overwhelming, because you're like, okay, why would he let this happen? Like, this is kind of scary. He has a lot of power. It can be overwhelming at times. And as an answer to the questions that are rolling in your head, he then goes back and restates Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the merciful, the especially merciful. So even when things get crazy, even when you're getting overwhelmed at the fact that this man created all of us, we are servants to him, how overwhelming and scary that can be, he emphasizes once again, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. He is strong, he is amazing, and he's a giant, but he's also merciful. He's especially merciful. And again, it goes into sovereign of the day of recompense, which is again like the day of judgment. So Maliki Yawmiddin. And then it goes into, it is you worship and you we ask for help. And this is when the supplication begins. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'een. And then it goes, Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Guide us to the straight path. Even in this, every day, if you were to recite it like we do for our prayers, and even as we do for our prayers, we already completed a dua. We've already completed a supplication to Allah. And not one time, not two times, but how many times during the day when we're praying in each raka'at, we have to begin with Surah Al-Fatiha. And I just thought that was really beautiful, because again, if we take time to look back and see how amazing and how understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is of all that we do, and how aware he is of all that we do, and how he exists again as a mercy to us. SubhanAllah. So I just wanted to kind of like put an emphasis on that. But inshallah, I'll jump back into our presentation with Surah Al-Baqarah before I get ahead of myself. Okay. So these are the lessons that we tend to learn from this. Let me make this bigger. So the importance of knowledge, believing in the unseen, protecting one's heart. What I found is there's a power in understanding what's there for us, what we can do, what we can be, not being just a Muslim, but striving to be a muhsin and a mu'min, rising above ranks. That's all of mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when I think about Surah Al-Fatiha, just being the opener, just being something that can heal, something that's so beautiful, something that encompasses the whole of the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pushes and encourages and requires us to respond and recite every day. SubhanAllah, like the mercy behind it. He could have made us recite all of Baqarah. He could have made it compulsory for us to recite all these different pages, but instead he said, no, I want my servant to recite this, recite Surah Al-Fatiha. And I want my servant to And within it, he crafted it as a supplication to him. So even if you are not aware of what your words are saying, the supplication is already there. You're already asking from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're already asking for guidance. You're always asking to come back to him, as each prayer serves to be a pillar that shifts you back into where you need to be. So alhamdulillah, I just wanted to kind of put a highlight on that. And these are the many different lessons that we kind of learn from Fatiha and Baqarah, like whether it be like ihsan, and in that sense that I feel I love, like the concept of ihsan is very important in that it deals with a believer, a sense of sincerity, sense of integrity, effort, accuracy, and correctness in all of your acts, submitting to Allah, repenting constantly. And again, I kind of put this aspect here where it's being proactive is abstaining from bad habits, but reactive is repenting, but not with the intent of having to go back to those bad acts that you had to respond to. So inshallah, just being mindful of what we do, being mindful of what we consume, especially during this time. I'm trying to be mindful of our time and not like go through all this too crazy, but the importance of knowledge again. I think what I did end up encompassing the most from this, though, is believing in the unseen, and that is the day of judgment, that is the angels, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I feel like a lot of the times people tend to get overwhelmed by all of it and like, oh no, like I don't want to mess up, I'm scared of the day of judgment. But also know that there are provisions in place that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had put in for us. There are provisions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already instilled for us, such that we don't fall too difficultly like into this world. There is an angel that protects us from the front and an angel that protects us from the back. There are two other angels that record our good deeds and bad deeds. And then again, as we go through, I'll show you more places where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does put provisions for us. So don't feel as if a lot of the times it tends to be like, it's me choosing the Quran, it's me choosing the deen, like I'm alone in this, like Allah is the only person that like he is the one that I have to submit to. Like if I mess up, he's going to like leave me at any sense. But that's not simply true, because again, he's all seeing. He knows what you're going to do. He knows what you choose. He knows what everything is. But again, he reiterates multiple times that we just have to turn to him. And he already has so many things in place. There's a reason why we can't see everything. There's a reason why we can't see our future. There's a reason why we can't see even the whole of the world in one view. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can. So again, never feel like what you're going through is too big or too small. But don't ever feel as if you're alone in any of it. Because again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. And even if you feel as though he's not there, and find comfort and seek comfort in that he's already placed provisions. He's already placed things into motion to protect you and safeguard you and be there for you. Okay. So I'm going to go into more of the core of Al-Baqarah as it goes into Juz 2. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, "And when my servant asks you, O Muhammad, concerning me, indeed I am near. I respond to the invocation of the supplication when he calls upon me. So let them respond to me by obedience and believe in me that they may be rightly guided." And in this ayat, I found beautiful in that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages us to be God conscious. He encourages us to turn to him. He encourages us not to feel so devoid and wallow in our bad deeds or wallow in what is not good for us, but instead to look at him. And again, revert back to this ayat in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 186, where he says, if my servant asks you, O Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, concerning me, indeed I am near. I respond to the invocation of the supplication when he calls upon me. And we've already said that if you just recite Surah Al-Fatiha, there's already a supplication within that. So if you just were to recite that, he comes back to you. He comes to help you. He wants to draw nearer to you. So even when everything feels like it's crazy or everything feels like a mess, he wants to respond to you. He wants to be there for you. And he wants to be present within your lives as well, as long as we allow him to be. And again, understand that we have rights. Allah bestowed upon us many rights as human beings, but also we have obligations to him. And what I mean by that is that there's a beauty and a blessing and a privilege in the fact that we are Muslims. What do I mean by that? Is that every servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has an obligation to him. Every servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owes his wealth to him, owes his any reward or any element within this dunya was bestowed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I feel that what gets lost upon people is that we tend to look at others, especially those who are like non-Muslim or other people who are not necessarily God conscious, and we see them and we see their happiness. We see how they're coasting through this dunya and they're not being smited upon. You're like, no, but the shaitan doesn't get them. Or, oh, Allah, like, why, if he loves us or he favors us, why does he not restore us to those high elements or those high heights? Everything, again, comes with its due purpose and due time. But also understand that those people are not aware of the obligations that they have to Allah. Subhanallah. Like, imagine all the hardships that we're going through, all the difficulty that we're going through, and we keep repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We keep coming back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are God conscious of him because some of us were born Muslim or some of us converted to Islam. But there's a beauty in that because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed us to be awake. He allowed us to see the difficulty that exists. He allowed us to see where our faults are. He allowed us to see that he is there, that we are conscious of him. And so what I think is most beautiful about this is that we find contentment with Allah. We find happiness with Allah. We find so much with Allah. We find even difficulty and hardship that he's bestowed upon us, but never without what we can't hold. He never gives us more than we can hold and more than we can deal with. And even though it seems overwhelming and crazy at times, it's important to kind of focus on that element and also understand that, that again, like with this God conscious element, that we are fulfilling our obligations to Allah, whereas those people who may seem to be happy, who may seem to be guided and all in goodness with power and with their wealth, they're constantly searching for something. For what is that in this dunya? It's all temporary elements. There's nothing tangible that comes from them, nothing that can really allow them to reach that level of contentment that Allah can give to us, even if we don't have wealth. We can be content with Allah, happy with this dunya, even in poverty, if Allah wills to give it to us. So understand that there's a beauty in knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us that hardship, gave us that trial to turn to him. Because sometimes we get wrapped up in the dunya where we don't turn to Allah and praise him when all things go well, but we turn to him only when things go bad. So alhamdulillah, at least he gave us those hardships so that we would turn to him, so that we can learn from him and that we can go to him and fulfill our obligations to him. So just be mindful of that anytime that you feel like everything's too crazy or everything's too bad. Allah's giving you an opportunity to turn to him so that he can reward you with something better or deal you a hardship that'll protect you from something worse that could have came had you not turned to him in that moment. So again, there's an importance in being mindful of your company, what you digest, who you're around. Focus again on what you've gained, because as much as negativity tends to come, as much as difficulty tends to come, the way you deal with the hardship, the way that you choose to navigate it, the way that you choose to see that this is a problem as of right now, but that is a means to get through this tunnel. Alhamdulillah, I've had a friend kind of break it down to me where this hardship is just something, it's just a road. It's something that you just have to kind of go through. But as long as you go through it with the notion that there's a light at the end, even if that light changes its color or is a different color, there's a light at the end that you need to focus on, that you need to move toward, that you need to understand that Allah knows what's best for you and that you can't simply view or wallow in what is bad. You can't wallow in what you are dealt, but instead find beauty within it, because that is the only way you're going to get through. And so I'm going to quickly section off to Surah Ali Imran and Baqarah, inshallah, and highlight a couple of the verses here. I'm not going to spend too much time on the lessons, but rather Ayatul Kursi, if you guys are aware of it, and like the importance and implications behind that. I'm going to recite this very quickly, and then inshallah break it down, and we'll just go through the verses from this point on. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. صدق الله العظيم. Sorry, my fasting voice just drains all the from my throat. Okay, so this ayat goes, O Allah, there is no deity except Him, the ever-living, the sustainer of all existence. Neither drowsiness overtakes Him nor sleep. To Him belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth. Who is it that can intercede with him except by his permission? He knows what is presently before them, and what will be after them, and they encompass not a thing of his knowledge except for what he wills. His kursi extends, or his chair extends, or his throne extends over the heavens and the earth, and their preservation tires him not. And he is the Most High, the Most Great. So I find comfort in this ayah, as it again deviates the power and weight of Allah. And I know that a lot of the times we get overwhelmed. Okay, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a very high stature. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is this like individual that we can like reach to, that we can like ask for. But there's an emphasis on here that he is not man. He is not created with flaws. He is not someone or a deity or a being or an entity that can be related with anything else. He is powerful, and there's a beauty in his power. Imagine we're dealing with a conflict of, oh, I want this phone, or I want this, or I want that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's such a small concept to him. And it's anything that he can do. Like, I want to emphasize the fact that our worldly issues are so small relative to what he can do, what his might, what his power can do for us. So as long as we understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes, he is there for us. Yes, he is there to listen to us. But never when you're asking for something, and I think this is where I kind of want to go with this, when you're asking for something, when you're supplicating for something, ask for whatever you wish. Ask for something that is so good for you, that is something that you deeply, sincerely want. Ask for something that is so close to your heart. Ask him for anything, because he's the one, he knows what's in your heart. So when people say, oh, like you shouldn't ask him for this worldly things, we should not ask for this and that, you can turn to Allah, you can ask him. There's no judgment there. There is no problems there. There is no reservation there. There's no limitation to his might and his power and his mercy and his authority. So I tell you guys that if anything, take the time after this to just write a dua, write a supplication, write something to Allah, and delve yourself. If you have a journal, just write everything that's troubling you, everything that's on your mind, whether it's good or bad, and just make dua to him. Thank him. Thank him if you need to. Ask him for help if you need to. Just take the time. There's so much beauty that comes with us being aware of this time. Because again, when we think of the Day of Judgment, I feel like many of us don't focus on the fact that it's not just us, like the millions and billions of people that exist within this world today, but those who've existed throughout time, throughout history. He is so powerful in that, with all the elements that are going on in the world, in the galaxies, in the space, in the expanding universe, he sees us, he hears us, and he protects us. And with this ayat, if you did not know, if you recite it 2 times before you go to sleep, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send upon you 2 angels to safeguard you. And if you recite it 3 times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself will safeguard you and protect you as you sleep. And if you recite it in the morning, he will protect you throughout the day. And again, if you recite it at night, he will protect you throughout the night. So inshallah, there's so many beautiful things that can come from this. And it's just, there's so much emphasis on, again, like his throne, his kursi. And inshallah, if this were to be like a more of a intensive tafsir, I would expand further into it. But alhamdulillah, there's just so much beauty that comes with this ayat. It's ayat 255. Again, if you get a chance, go back to it in Surah Al-Baqarah, break it down, try and learn it, try and you don't even have to memorize it, just recite it, keep it in your mind. And I honestly am a very firm believer in exposing yourself to the Quran, having it present, having it everywhere. Alhamdulillah, my mother has the Qurans all over the house. So, but it really does work, because when you see it, when you're more exposed to it, when it's not concealed away on your phone, when it's not concealed away from you in a room or in another space, then it's better to be more exposed to it, because you'll more likely be able to turn to it. But even then, have a separate time for it. Give it its due right. The one thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter you're rich or poor or anything at all, the same thing we all have is the same 24 hours in a day. Whether we dedicate it or shift it around, making sure that our priorities are where they should be. And again, going back to the hardship aspect, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the last ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah, when he goes, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, when he goes on about Allah does not charge the soul except within its capacity. It will have the consequence of what is good it has gained, and it will bear the consequence of what evil it has earned. Our Lord, do not impose blame upon us if we have forgotten or erred, or our Lord, and lay not upon us a burden like that which you laid upon those before us. Our Lord, and burden us not with what which we have no ability to bear, and pardon us and forgive us and have mercy on us. you are our protector, so give us victory over the disbelieving people. And this, again, is the last ayat. There's a protection that also comes with reciting the last two ayahs of Surah Al-Baqarah and just breaking them down, because there's so much beauty in all of this. And I find that this is one of my favorite ayahs, in that it tells us that it's a good reminder that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, does not charge us more than it can bear. It does not put too much on us more than we can bear. It gives us the ability, the strength, the understanding that even when things seem impossible, even when circumstances seem ridiculous and just too much, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it in a way that we can handle it. We are equipped to do it. So never feel like you're faltering, that never feel like you're unable, that you're not enough, that you can't do what you need to do. Like, subhanAllah, especially living in America and like living in this society, it's difficult to see the beauty in a lot of things, because we tend to get wrapped up in all the negativity. We tend to get wrapped up in a lot of the issues that plague society. And that even within myself, being a Black Muslim female, a first generation, low income student, there are a lot of negative attributes people have assigned to me being Black, to me being a woman, to me being Muslim, to me being low income, to me being this and that. And like, subhanAllah, even then I have privilege over others, because I'm able to attend a university. I have privilege over others in that I still have a roof over my head, that I have a beautiful family with me, And so just to put everything into perspective, no matter how difficult things seem to get, no matter how crazy things seem to get, remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there for you. You're here for a reason. You have this time for a reason. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calculated in a way that we'd be in each other's presence at this exact moment. I never thought I'd be here giving this type of talk. But subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed me to be here for you all, and just kind of relay a little bit of what I know, and kind of, again, breaking down this Quran and going into it and really pushing ourselves to build a relationship with it. Because I swear to you, when everything else seems crazy, when you're stuck between what school of thought should I be, what this should I be, what that should I be, the only thing that gives you true clarity and true peace of mind is the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So go back and try and learn them. And again, these are just some of the elements that you learned that we gather from Juz 3. Forgiveness and kindness, the best qualities of a believer. Shaitan, again, will threaten you with poverty or entice you with wealth, but only Allah brings true bounty and weight. There's the ayats that we referenced, asking for forgiveness during the early hours, reaffirming our love of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and what that looks like, family dynamics, and there's so many beautiful things that go into this juz. So again, screenshot, do what you need to as well. I'm going to jump into the next couple juzes just so that we can round up today. Again, in this ayat, I just kind of want to emphasize the qualities of a believer and how we should always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in everything that we do to increase us in our character. And in this ayat, he says, who spend in the cause of Allah during ease and hardship, and who restrain anger and who pardon the people, and Allah loves the doers of good. So in this ayat, in 134, there's a beauty in it, in that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places an importance on us remaining united, an importance on us being good with our words, being conscious of what we put out into the world. I know that a lot of the times when we're conversing, or things tend to get away from us, or rather than let people go or pardon people for their wrongdoings, we tend to feel as though we have a sense of justice or a sense of upright by attacking others and correcting their character. And although that is a beautiful thing, although we do have an obligation to do that, there's also beauty in, like, not like to test the waters, to read the room, to see what values can bring to you checking this person, or what values come with you, like talking to someone in a way that still gives them dignity and respect. Because we have a responsibility to each other, even if we're in argument, even when we're in disputes, or even when someone is so clearly wrong, we still have an obligation to them to treat them with respect. Even when someone is treating us wrong, we have an obligation to meet them with the love and the mercy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would like us to meet them with. And I feel like in like these moments, before I kind of jump into the rest of like the obligations and everything that we have for each other, is also kind of placing emphasis on the ties that we have to one another, the ties that we have, and the rights and everything that our brothers and sisters in Islam have over each other, and kind of putting emphasis on the fact that we have an obligation in that we owe each other respect. We owe each other so many elements. Our tie through the shahada is tighter to us than any tie of blood. Like my siblings to me are my siblings, yes, through blood, and through like connection through our mothers and through all those bloodlines. But in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what's more meaningful and what's more powerful in this dunya and in the akhirah is my tie to my brothers and sisters in Islam who have said the shahada. There's a sense of camaraderie amongst mankind, among creation, but there's nothing tighter to us than our shahada. So kind of putting an emphasis on when we speak to others, when we are talking in the presence of others, are we exposing ourselves to people who speak harshly? Because at the end of the day, I know I joke about this, but when you watch a certain show, when you talk to certain people, you tend to pick up their mannerisms and their habits. Are these the good people that you want to be around? Is this the best thing that you want to be around? Or are you truly meeting someone with the highest level of kindness? Even if it hurts you, you must always reach each other with kindness. Like I find there's beauty in that because when you reach them with kindness, even when time passes, they'll remember that. They'll remember that element of kindness where you could have been mean, where you could have been rash, where you could have said this, where you could have said that. Even when you're dealing with your children, I know there's discipline aspects, but even with myself, my most memorable moments were when my mom, instead of ridiculing me, saw my intentions, knows my intentions, saw like even when like I dropped something or I tried to make something or I tried to cook something for them and it just went completely wrong as a kid, I did it with the understanding that I wanted to do something for them as people that I love, rather than ridicule and be like, why'd you make this mess? There's a beauty in wanting to reach each other for through kindness and through those means. And again, I ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us all in character, increase us all in being truly embodying the qualities of the Quran and going back into these surahs and going back into these elements and lessons that exist within this Quran, this beautiful Quran, and seeing in the followings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the seerahs of both him and the prophets and the nabis that came before him. There's so much purpose and so much beauty that lies within that. And so, again, just some ayats from Surah Nisa, and this is a beautiful surah. And in this ayat, it discusses, and whoever obeys Allah and the Messenger, those will be the ones upon whom Allah has bestowed favor of the prophets. And so there's a beauty in this, that it's not only the favor of the prophets, the steadfast affirmers of the truth, the martyrs and the righteous, and excellent are those as companions. So what we need to do, and what it's kind of in bestowing upon us, is understanding that the good deeds, imagine receiving the rewards of a prophet, the favor, the love as a prophet did from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a beauty in that if we obey Allah, if we look at them, if we obey the messenger, if we stay tied within our firm beliefs of the shahada, if we say fulfilling our obligations, we continue to push and try to be better and do better and try to learn and always educate ourselves. Because again, my brothers and sisters, a big problem is people tend to stop wanting to learn. People don't tend to vet the facts that they are getting. People don't want to get for themselves. They want everything to be quick and easy. And again, I am a victim of, I am guilty of that too. But what comes with us actively being there for one another, actively obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the messenger, what that means, embodying the qualities, looking toward these lessons from the Quran, there's nothing better than that. And so inshallah, I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow us to reach that status of bestowing being bestowed upon the favors of the prophets and those of martyrs and the righteous, and allows us to be those excellent companions for individuals and allow us to be in the presence of excellent companions. And again, going into these next surahs, I wish we had more time, but we're rounding near the end here. But I did want to emphasize that, yes, someone just asked, Salam, can I reach out for questions? If so, what is your email? Of course. I will plug that for you guys if you guys like this presentation. But yes, I just kind of wanted to go through a lot of these ayats with you all. I might do that next week, inshallah. So please, if I want you guys to take anything from this, is I'm sorry, the people are messaging me. Oh, you guys are so nice. Yes, I will send it all to you, inshallah. But I do just kind of wanted to, I'm sorry, a lot of it got away from me, and inshallah next time I'll be reciting a lot more. But what I do want you guys to take from this is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there whether we're aware of it or not. And especially for me, being a college student and being going through what I've gone through and enduring what I have, especially with family back in Somalia and with family back home, and even here, like subhanAllah, the course of life can go so many different directions. But the best thing is, like, no matter what happens, is that we always turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because I swear to you, He's always there. He's always listening. He's always wondering what He can do to help us. If only we could just turn to Him. And again, when any hardship comes your way, be mindful of the fact that Allah placed that hardship for you so that you can turn to Him, so that you can fulfill your obligation to Him, so that you can begin reciting, you can perfect yourself, you can grow, you can see the beauty that you need to attain, you know? So inshallah, I want you guys to, if anything, know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always there, and your problems, your issues, your faults are never greater than His mercy. It doesn't matter what you are going through. And alhamdulillah, if you're aware of the Quran, if you're well versed in it yourself, be that person that connects others to it as well. If you are even struggling yourself, or you're trying to find a support group, I encourage you. With me and my friends, we link together and we recite together. We try and learn together, and make those spaces where there's no judgment, there's no disrespect, there's no nothing. Because again, all of that is, especially we're going to see more so after the month of Ramadan, but understanding that there's shaitan amongst us. There's problems and waswasa and everything. But what we need to do is stay steadfast in what we're doing and always turn back to Allah. No matter how crazy things get, no matter how difficult things get, there's beauty in the verses. There's beauty in everything that Allah's given to us. And there's purpose behind all of His words. So thank you guys so much for being with me today. Inshallah, I can inform you all better and give a more comprehensive talk next time, and really go through the juzzes and kind of just highlight some of these verses. But again, thank you guys so much for being here. I will plug my email if you guys need, and or you can